Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Narcissistic Rage of Dem Soft Climate Denialists versus Climate Activists at Nantucket Fundraiser. So this is kind of a quick reaction video that I'm going to point to the video that was made at an action by Climate Defiance, which is a group that I am part of. I wasn't part of this action. This video is not an official, commentary on that. It's my personal view of the video that they produced, or the action as it occurred, but it reveals themes that I think are very important for understanding not only where we are at in terms of climate action, but the general character of the Democratic Party, the elite of the Democratic Party, the influence of the donor class on that party, and the consultant class that surrounds the most powerful Democratic lawmakers. And so, in any case, I'm anyway, what was striking to me in this video, and again, this is my personal interpretation, I did not have any part in the planning of this action. I approve of the action. Personally, I think it was a good action by a group that I, have done activism with in a couple of different other occasions. But in any case, what was shown there, what was striking to me, was the level of rage and hatred and shown against these activists by these elite Democratic either organizers or consultants and donors who were gathered at this event so this was for the campaign of Maura Healey, who is the current Massachusetts governor, and there's some and the Climate Defiance organized this to highlight that Healey and the government of Massachusetts has some fossil fuel investments, and they haven't committed to totally divesting from fossil fuels, and also from refuse to approve new fossil fuel projects, and I live in New Jersey myself. I see small fossil fuel projects, including gas lines being built in the town I live in, but also and that is not necessarily the subject of any given action by a climate activist, but it's all retrograde. It's all what we shouldn't be doing. We should be stopping all new fossil fuel infrastructure, including new consumer gas lines to homes and businesses and so forth and so on, natural gas lines. So, but anyway, this so they were pointing out the hypocrisy of Climate Defiance was pointing out the hypocrisy of this at this event of a Democratic Party that claims to be concerned about climate, but doesn't consequently act on it, and in fact takes donations from fossil fuel interests, and so the activists got up and they confronted Healey and then put up a banner that was about no new fossil fuels and no fossil fuel investments and no donations from fossil fuel interests. There was a whole host of demands there, and what was striking to me was, now this was at a private home in Nantucket, an extremely exclusive resort, has become extremely exclusive resort over the last 100 years or so. on the coast of Massachusetts. It's an island, and it's very, very expensive to have a house there and to even visit there, or at least to stay overnight there. So anyway, so it's a gathering of elite Massachusetts Democrats and donors, and so Climate Defiance was there, and it was a question was asked, and so this was something that you see in the video that this is a party that really needs to respond to fact-based questions and challenges about climate issues, or at least it is, in order for it to be even to play the game of being a democratic leader, you need to at least pay lip service to climate action of some kind, and at this point in history, and that the Republican Party is not in that situation. Okay, so let's be clear that this kind of demonstration is possible at a Republican fundraiser or in a against Republican politicians, but in general they deny. They are what I call hard climate denialists, or they continue to try to do the absolute minimum, or to say it's not, to say that climate change exists, but it's not that important. So any number of different ways. But the Democratic Party is not playing, or cannot play, by those same, at least rhetorical games. So I call that soft climate denial. So the soft climate denial, and it's a concept I've, I don't know, pioneered or whatever it is over the last decade or so. But I think it's a good concept to understand the political and psychological dynamics involved in compartmentalizing, both politically but also in your own mind, the idea that climate change exists and is serious, at the same time not doing consequential things, not putting into action a plan of action to address and also to isolate the fossil fuel industry, to not represent it in government, and not to approve new projects of that industry, and to create a plan to phase out fossil fuels, which includes obviously a massive building project that, fortunately or unfortunately, can really only be undertaken by currency issuing governments, or can only be not undertaken, but it can only be successfully executed with the spending power of currency issuing governments like the U.S. federal government. But in any case, states can start making steps in that direction, and so anyway, so this at this fundraiser, we see the reaction of people who are invested in the democratic discourse of soft climate denial, and you see some middle-aged and elder gentlemen mostly, and there was also a woman who are enraged that they are being called out about their hypocrisy on climate and their what I call soft climate denial, but that they're speaking certainly out of both sides of their mouth, or they are saying that they're concerned about climate, but they're not doing the minimum, or even the max, or the middle, taking the middle path in terms of taking consequential steps in that direction. So anyway, there is. Anyway, you see in the video the rage of these. Now, they were wearing name tags, so I was able to identify two of the people who were angrily pursuing these climate activists to leave the property where this fundraiser was occurring. They essentially had broken up the fundraiser, which was, and created the pressure that I think that that climate activists need to do to smoke out the soft climate denial, or the hypocrisy, however you want to call it, but to say, look, we have to act. This is an emergency. We have to act, consequentially, and do everything we can to minimize and shut down the fossil fuel industry in a stepwise way, and again, best initiated and planned with the help of the federal government. And there's areas where we need to be pressuring them more. But in any case, the pressuring a powerful Democratic stronghold like Massachusetts, the parts of that, the national, the DNC, some of these people who were at this event were also DNC members, so essentially the central committee of the Democratic Party. So we need these people to be pressuring the leadership, pressuring Biden and Harris and so forth and so on. So a state level delegation, it makes sense to be pressuring from the point of view of a state party, especially one that's so powerful as the Massachusetts delegation is. So in any case, not the most powerful, but a powerful delegation. So anyway, these people are enraged, okay, at these, and there's claims that one who's a high power lawyer, who's a Democratic consultant or a Democratic lobbyist, or it says that he's been a climate activist all along, and he's been a climate activist long before the activists there were, and he knows the way it goes. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. You see the video, you can see the interactions. My paraphrases are not necessarily entirely accurate, but and there was another one that was saying, I have solar on everything, I'm doing everything I can, and the activist says, from Climate Defiance, says, we need political pressure, not just your individual consumption decisions. So you see a clear demonstration of the point of climate activism, or the cutting edge of climate activism now, is to get government action and get governments to actually do policy rather than just encourage markets to do faster uptake of solar by persuasion or by rebates and so forth and so on. But to some of the action of governments is accelerating market adoption of things like heat pumps and solar and electric vehicles and so forth and so on, and electric bikes, much overlooked, by the way, and bike infrastructure and all kinds of different things that will make more lightweight our transport infrastructure that's currently very biased toward large vehicles, and an arms race in terms of people armoring themselves on the roads with mostly fossil fueled large vehicles, but also the electric vehicle segment is, in the United States at least, entering with some of the biggest and most aggressive electric vehicles you could imagine, rather than lighter weight vehicles that would be more safer and more efficient and more sustainable. But anyway, you see these interactions and in this video, and the rage that you see is, I think, a reflection of this, the investment of the elites of the Democratic Party in the appearance of their righteousness, okay? And that they're enraged that someone is saying, look, your righteousness is if not entirely a sham, it's shallow, and it's not as righteous as we need it to be, and in the sense of doing things in terms of actual action. It's a show, And the thing is that the people who are putting on this show, the false self, so this is why I call it narcissistic rage, the false self of the Democratic elite is that we are the best and most virtuous people, and that anybody who suggests that we are not can need to be attacked immediately because they are, bad people, and they're unrealistic, or they're crazies, or whatever it is that you want to say. They're not serious people, so to speak. They don't know how to get one of these elite functionaries or lobbyists, basically, at this event. I believe he's a lobbyist, was saying, you don't know how to get things done. That we know how to get things done, you don't. So, and so anyway, so their self-image and is that their way is the only way, that all the compromises they make, all the supposedly compromises or whatever, their way of insider politics and money-drenched politics, and is the only way to do things, and that people who confront them on issues of policy, on issues of actual action, are people who are necessarily unserious. They're not part of this inside group that has wormed its way in to the levers of power, and who are supposedly people of conscience, people who have of high moral tone, and that therefore if anyone is calling them that their moral tone is a sham, or is inconsistent, or that they're enraged because that's their identity. Certainly, in the province of politics, where they consider it kind of almost their philanthropy, the thing that they may do, to make their money, they may do something else. Some of the donors may be doing things that are. One of the gentlemen, I think, is actually a developer. So he made his money in real estate, but his sense of righteousness comes from his political activism. So here these activists are questioning, according to him, or are creating this, and frankly, the activists are not really interested in his amour propre, is his love of himself, is his own reflection in the mirror of being a good person. But they want action. They want consequential action. They want isolation of the fossil fuel industry. They want the Democratic Party to cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry, and not take its money, and to shut down any new projects, and then also stepwise wean us from fossil fuels. And so anyway, my interpretation of this, you can look at the video yourself and you will see different things going on, and you might have a different take on it. But I see, and I'm pointing out one aspect of it. There are other aspects that you can point out, but this element of the self righteousness of the Democratic elite is part of what keeps them, I think, from yielding, especially the older ones, yielding to reality, and also to younger people who are more in touch with the reality than they are. And so some of their attachment to themselves is because they think of themselves as being these very, very superior people, and they act like it. So, for instance, Nancy Pelosi is famous for this kind of, as is Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and so forth and so on. They really, there's a lot of self-celebration in their presentation, and so and the contrast with and they can have a justification for that when they contrast themselves with the Republican Party, because the Republican Party are these groups of real antisocial, amoral people who are, openly, and celebrating ignorance and creating ignorance and creating, so yes, they have a contrast, to where they can sort of feel, well, by comparison, they're better. They are, but they're not nearly the people we need at the levers of power right now, and they're trying to keep their access to the levers of power, or keep the people who would do something with those levers of power that is positive for people, positive for the climate, that is stabilizing for those. That they're trying to keep them away because they think they have discovered the way to be a good person, but only in contrast to the Republicans, who are, really antisocial saboteurs of our society. And so yes, they, in comparison to saboteurs, they are somewhat better, but that's not saying much. And they should be welcoming the criticism, of younger people or even other people of their age who say, you need to do things consequentially and in a way that's taking us into the future, and stabilizing the climate and addressing the unfolding climate catastrophe that's this in 2023 is absolutely impossible to ignore, and it needs to be addressed politically through government policy. Yes, individual action does a very, very small thing, but it is not. If you're standing around fundraising for a political candidate, you need to be on top of the policy, and you need to be proposing and getting the policy through, pressuring, if you consider yourself, quote unquote, to be a climate activist. So anyway, I highly recommend looking at this very short video, and I hope my presentation has, been helpful and let me just note one thing. So Politics 2100 has been trying to distinguish between the Republican and Democratic parties. So this sort of good cop, bad cop routine that they do. And so here we see this is the good cops and how they react to being confronted with their game of being good cops, and that they are angry when they're exposed as being basically protectors of the status quo, as cops are supposed to be, or at least cops tend to be, you could say. And they're simply, and their game of being good cops, it needs to be, quote unquote, to them, in their mind, protected from activists who say, well, wait a minute, are you really good? Are you really actually good? And so this is an instance of people calling them on, are you good? And they are not, they're not the good cops they make themselves out to be. And we all wish that they were, but they're not. So anyway, please like the video if you've gotten something out of it. Please subscribe to Politics 2100, and please share your thoughts in the comments below if I've done any justice to the video in interpreting it. I hope I have, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.